Okay.
How are you?
Fine, sir.
Very well.
How are you, sir? I hope all is
Pastor, good to see you.
good to see you too. Thank you so much.
You are looking very fresh. Oh.
You beat me to it.
Pastor is looking like fresh fish, you know, very fresh.
As long as it's not too quick, I'm okay.
Life can never be. No. Okay, Okiki is on now.
Okiki is here with us. Yeah. Yeah, she's still muted. So, no, I think you better start. She's here.
Okay, I think yeah. All right. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to have us all here. We usually are very privileged to have with us some really great guests to be part of our webinar series. This series has been created to help educate a lot of couples on the challenges around fertility, and then provide them with all the information or most of the information that they need to be able to take informed choices. And today I'm extremely delighted to have with us someone who I hold extremely very dear to myself, and maybe Pastor may not remember, but we have with us Pastor Ituah Ighodalo in the house. We have Mrs. Okiki Marinho, has also a very exciting story around her fertility journey. And we have, as usual, our in-house specialist, Dr. Abayomi Ajayi, who is, he wears the number of hats. He's Chief Executive Officer of the Nordica Fertility Center. He's also a patron of a support group who provides psychological support, hold your hand while you are going through the process. Before you go into the process, the support group is called the Fertility Awareness Advocacy Initiative. And we have somewhere in the house, the president of that association. He's a lawyer by profession. His name is Mr. Omoz Eborokai. He also has a very exciting story, and I hope that someday, maybe not on this particular edition, he would also share that story with a lot of people. I've never seen a man so resilient with the issue of fertility, and I can just drop it on the house that had a multiple number of trials before he finally got one of the most beautiful daughters I've seen, in a beautiful girl and very intelligent, smart girl. So Mr. Omoz Eborokai is also in the house. Just to help with some kind of ground rules, everyone is muted except those who are here on the panel. So when you have a question, please drop it in the chat room. Some questions came in before the program started. Since people registered, some people sent in questions, and we will be taking those questions also. Then the flow for the day will be basically very conversational type. We will have Dr. Abayomi Ajayi give us a medical perspective as to why you may need IVF. So we're looking at the medical. Then we'll have Pastor Ituah give his own thoughts on why people may need IVF. And we'll then have Okiki Marinho tell her story and how she eventually ended up and what she's done so far. Then we'll go to the house and take questions. So it's just about everyone listening to good perspectives, and we then take it up from there. So I'll hand over to Dr. Abayomi Ajayi right now to kick the ball, set the ball rolling.
Yes, thank you so much, Onoz. And It's also a pleasure to be here this evening and to be in the company of very great people. And we're talking about a topic that we are all excited and about. So I'm going to say, why you might need IVF. And I'll try a little bit to be historical about it. We know that the first baby from IVF was born in 1978, and that was because there was female infertility. The mother had 2 ectopic pregnancies. So the commonest reason why people started doing IVF was because of blocked tubes, when the problem with the tubes. We know what the tubes do. They are the ones that pick up the egg to make the sperm to be able to meet up with the egg. So one common reason why you might need IVF may be blocked tubes. And then that was the main reason until 1992, when we were able to do what we call ICSI, or intracytoplasmic sperm injection. What that means is just that we take a sperm and we're able to inject it into one egg, because IVF on its own, if the sperm count is not very good, the sperm might not even be able to fertilize the egg, even when it's outside the body. We know that IVF means in vitro fertilization. It means fertilization taking place outside the body. So the second indication why you might need IVF will be when the sperm count is not very good. All right. And then, so from 1992, we were able to do that one. And 1 year after that, we actually were able to cater for men who don't have sperm at all, when we can now go into the testes to be able to take the sperm from the testes, if it is there, and then use it to inject into the egg. So that also has been on. And then also we are able to do IVF for people, what we call surrogacy, a variant of IVF that we call surrogacy, for either people who don't even have uterus at all, or people whose health cannot support a pregnancy. Surrogacy also is a form of IVF, but the only difference is that you need another person to help you to carry the pregnancy. So, in other words, IVF mainly until recently was used only for people who had one form of infertility or the other. But the scope has increased greatly over the years. And right now, about over 8 million babies have been born all over the world from IVF, because now we can also use IVF when you don't want to transmit diseases that can be inherited to your offsprings. Maybe in this environment, one that easily comes to mind is hemoglobinopathy, or what we call hemoglobin SS, or genotype SS, if you like. When 2 people who are AS get married, and every time there's a pregnancy, they have a 25% chance of having a baby that is SS. But with IVF now, it's possible for us to be able to select embryos that don't carry that. So it's possible for people, and so many people even in Nigeria have done that, who are 2 AS people getting married and they've had healthy children without SS. But also, this can be applied for cancer. There's some cancers that can be genetically transmitted, for example, breast cancer. When you have a strong family history of breast cancer, there are some tests that can be done to see whether it can be transmitted genetically. And once that is possible, that is present, then it's possible for you also to test your embryos. You do IVF, we test embryos to see whether these embryos carry these particular genes. And then we will not use the ones that carry the genes, we transfer the ones that don't carry the genes. So this is what that's what genetics has afforded us to be able to do with IVF. And so we can avoid people passing on cancers, even to their offsprings, even to call up to blindness. There's some blindness that is transmitted. So any disease that can be transmitted, we can prevent by doing IVF. And also recently, we've started doing IVF for fertility preservation. What I mean by this is that you can, for example, postpone your fertility, or, we talk about the biological clock. So it's possible for a woman to store her eggs, or if she's married, she can store embryos for later use. For a young single lady, she can decide to store her eggs at a particular age, because when you come back even a few years after that, maybe 10 years after that, your eggs will be as old as when you stored them. So it's possible also to preserve fertility, and also for people who have a form of cancer that either the treatment will impact on their fertility, either men or women. So it's possible also to restore fertility, or restore fertility, or preserve fertility that way. And also, of course, for people who have things like endometriosis, or even fibroids that require repeated surgeries, you can store your eggs and then come and use them later on. So the scope of IVF has expanded from just for infertility to other spheres of life. And one of the things that is very hot in this field now is the genetic editing that we are beginning to see now, that it's possible actually for people who are carrying some particular diseases that are carried in the genes, that we can edit them, and then we can make sure that they don't pass on the genes to the upstream. So I think that will be what I would just say. I hope I've been able to throw some light into that. And I don't know whether Pastor Okiki wants to put anything into it.
Well, not me, because you've been talking very technical things, genetic engineering and ICSI and this and that. And that. Me, I'm just going to pray that everything will go right.
Amen. Amen. That's important.
Thank you for making those technical things very, very simple, and giving for me a lot of understanding as to the various things, why IVF is used, and how it has progressed. And personally, from where I stand, even spiritually and everything, I'm just very, very thankful that this sort of discovery was made in medicine. You know, for me, it's almost like going into the mind of God and finding out how God made man and created man and allowed the sperm to hook onto an egg, and then from there there's fertilization and all that, and then finding ways by which you can even improve on what God had done, which is why God created man, to generally improve on the things that he had done. So God made the bird and allowed man to make the aeroplane. So God made the fish and allowed man to use the same aerodynamics to make the sheep or the ship. So and so on and so forth. God made caves and rocks and allowed men to build houses. So God created the process of fertility, and he has now allowed our imagination to come up with things like ICSI, to come up with things like genetics, to come up with things that can prevent disease. I know what my people in church go through when they are SS. I know the dangers, the challenges, the stress they go through, and yet they are married already, and that's fair. So if we can have something that can make sure that they can both have children naturally, but also not continue to ensure that this SS thing continues to go through, that is simply fantastic. And now you're talking about preventive medicine, so that you don't allow strains of cancer, strains of high blood pressure, and co to come down generational lines. I think that really is simply fantastic. So I must really congratulate those who made these discoveries and those who have improved on these discoveries over time. I know that a lot of people have different spiritual or religious thinking concerning IVF. From where I stand, I find nothing unspiritual about it, and I find nothing that affects the faith of men. You know, sometimes in church, people come to me and say, "Oh, Pastor, I'm just believing God, I'm just believing God, I'm just believing God." Yeah, you can believe God, but sometimes what God gives is wisdom and knowledge to do things that he doesn't need to do, and to solve problems that you don't need to pray about. Somebody was telling me the story recently of a pastor that went to Germany and was preaching, and he was telling them that if you are believing God for a car, come out. If you are believing God for a car, come out. And the Germans were a little bit shocked, and they were saying, what's this man talking about? If you want a car, go to the car shop, put your money down, pick up a car. Well, the man came with Nigerian mentality, where God is believing God for something or the other. God has provided knowledge, and therefore let us make use of this knowledge so that people can solve problems and they don't need to disturb God with prayer about problems that they themselves can solve. At the end of it all, God is still working, because you can put eggs together with sperm and nothing will happen. And I've seen it happen before. Or it happens and it doesn't happen properly. I've seen it happen before. My wife and I, my late wife and I, went through 11 IVF cycles. Dr. Ajayi, you know, I think we came to your clinic once or twice for that. And some pregnancy came down. Sometimes nothing happened. And that's what it is. It doesn't mean that God is still not God. And but what has happened is that through that experience, we've been able to now provide opportunity for a lot more people. So if we hadn't gone through that journey, maybe we may not have had the courage or the passion or the compassion to create opportunity for people. So God doesn't make a mistake. God knows exactly what he's doing. And we're just completing our 40 by 40, selecting 40 couples who would have the opportunity to go through this process. If we can have 100% success with that, I think it's well worth the pain and the stress that we've all been through. And this is, for me, what life is about. I don't know if I have said more than I'm supposed to say, but let me yield and get somebody else to speak. Let me ask Okiki, are you Miss or Mrs. Marinho?
Mrs.
Mrs. Marinho. I had a teacher in King's College called Mrs. Marinho, so I was wondering if you were related to her.
No, I married into their family.
Okay, all right. God bless you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, so, okay, so hi, I'm Okiki Marinho, and I got married in 2010, and my husband and I decided we wanted to wait for like a year before we started trying for children. So in June 2011, I got pregnant, because by then we started trying, and in fact, maybe under a month into when we said we'll start trying, I got pregnant quite easily. But about 2 weeks after I found out I was pregnant, I started spotting, and I went to the hospital, and they were like, "Oh, it's quite early. That it might be a miscarriage, or it might not be, you know." But I'm not going to say the name of the hospital, because my own story is one of them being very, very careless. And I always tell people it's a miracle I'm still here. So because of the fact that that was my first pregnancy, I didn't take it that seriously to get any second opinion. So they told me to go home, that the spotting might stop on its own. Then I came a week after, did a HCG test. It showed that I was still pregnant. But when they did the transvaginal scan, they said they couldn't see any sign of a pregnancy. Anyway, we had a lot of back and forth on a lot of medical negligence. And one fateful day, about maybe 8-9 weeks into my pregnancy, I was told to go to a place called, what's the name again? Crestview, a place in VI to check again, because by then my stomach was really swollen. You know, I was in excruciating pain and I was bleeding a lot by then. So when I got to Crestview and they checked, they were like, they were a bit confused, because they were concerned as to how I didn't know that I was still pregnant, because by then I thought I wasn't pregnant again. Long and short of it was, there was a dead fetus in me. And that same night I had an emergency surgery. Um, it was quite a traumatic experience. So they had to take out the remaining of a tube that apparently had exploded. You know, and just clean me up. It took another 3 months before I started feeling like 100% myself. And that same year in December, I got pregnant again. So that was 6 months after the first time I was pregnant. But this time around, I now understood what was going on. I had a condition called ectopic pregnancy, where the pregnancy keeps getting lodged in the wrong place. So instead of it to grow in the womb, it's growing in your tube, and your tube cannot like expand. Because some people ask me, oh, can the tube, sustain the baby and things like that? The tube is not where the baby is meant to grow. So when it happened again in December, this time around, I was on top of things. So I went to the UK. When I got to the UK, because of my age, and I think I was about 29 then, the fact that I hadn't had children yet, and the fact that one tube had been removed already. So I only had one more tube. So they decided to keep that tube. So they sucked out the fetus and kept that tube. Then a year after that, I now started, trying to look for alternatives because I wasn't getting pregnant. So then I started researching into IVF, but I wasn't yet ready to go under the IVF journey. Then a year after that, again, I got pregnant naturally, but it was a third ectopic pregnancy. So I went back to the UK, but this time I went to another hospital, and they were very upset with the first hospital that they should have just removed that tube 2 years before that time, because now obviously they had to remove the tube and all the emotional stress. So it meant that I think that was around May 2013, I became tubeless. Like I couldn't have children naturally anymore because both my fallopian tubes had been removed. So at that point, I knew for a fact that the only other option I had was going to be IVF or surrogacy or adoption. So some people don't realize that even without you having your tubes, you will still produce eggs. So it means that you can still get like good quality eggs, and it can be fertilized outside your body. So we did the first IVF December of 2013. I actually went to Dubai for that. Um, it didn't take, there was, at the end of the whole journey of the whole IVF thing, it was negative. I wasn't pregnant. Then I tried again about maybe 5 months after that first one. Second IVF, it didn't work either. Then I tried again a third time, but the third time was a bit more dramatic because the Dubai guys I went to meet, they said they had some new technique, and we had a surgery where they took out some cells and they said they were going to add it into the whole mixture of the next IVF. And it was just a whole painful, excruciating experience. But I was the one that signed up for it. And though it was free, quote unquote, the amount of pain and trauma I went through with that particular surgery where they took out cells that they were going to use on next IVF, it really scarred me a lot. So I went on and did that third IVF, and it still did not work. So at that point, I had given up on the IVF journey. I didn't want to hear about it again. But one fateful day, my husband said he heard Dr. Ajayi on the radio talking about IVF. So he was now trying to beg me with my dad. In fact, my dad had always begged me to try IVF in Nigeria. But because of the bad experience I had had with my whole ectopic pregnancy experience, I really didn't want to do anything in Nigeria at the time. So they both came, my husband and my dad were the ones actually begging that I should just go to Nordica, and try and all of that. So when I got to Nordica, and they put me through, what I'll go through, and they said to me they had to do something called, I think, endometrium scratching. And I said to them I wasn't interested. And they said they really would advise it since I had had that many failed IVF attempts and all of that. So eventually I agreed to it. And that was the only IVF that ever worked for me. And that's the IVF that eventually led to me having twins, a boy and a girl. So yeah, so obviously I owe a lot to Nautica. It felt like a dream. It was a beautiful dream come true for me. And I used to say to people then that there was a pattern in my life then, like usually every November, December, there was just always bad news, in terms of whether I'm pregnant or not, or losing a baby. My story is a bit longer than that because there are lots of things that were happening in between. in my journey of looking for kids. But as God will have it be, the children were born on Advent Sunday, November 27, 2016. So for me, it was very significant that they came then, because I felt like God himself was trying to tell me that, you know, he was always there, like he got it, you know. And yeah, so obviously now November, December is a happier time for me, you know. But yeah, so the truth of the matter is, I'm not going to lie, by the third time of IVF not working for me, I had totally given up on it. I don't, you know, but it's good to have a fantastic support system around me. And the fact that it was even the men in my life that were really rooting for me and pushing, you know, it meant a lot, you know. 'Cause I know a lot of people don't have that supportive system, and some husbands will give up even easier, you know, because IVF is not cheap, you know. It can be quite expensive for young couples, and the fact that that was my fourth one, you know, yeah. So it's, I mean, it was happy. I was happy that it worked out. But like I told my husband back then, I remember I had gotten to the stage where I was saying to him that we needed to drop a plan, because my plan was not to keep having IVFs. And I remember that fourth one, I was very clear with my husband, my dad, and even God. I was crystal clear. I was not going to do any other IVF after that one. Even the way they persuaded me to try that one, you know, it could only be God, because I was really genuinely done. I wanted to try surrogacy next. And if the surrogate way didn't work, the next thing on my list was to adopt. So I had written out certain steps I wanted to do on this journey. But it's not everybody that can come to that realization. You know, I have friends that obviously, you know, they're not interested. They don't want to try anything else other than they personally trying to have the kids themselves. But I also have friends who have adopted, you know, so I know it's different journeys for different people. I have people that keep looking at the twins and they keep wondering if there's going to be something wrong with them. You know, it's a bit shocking that we're in a Google generation where you can Google more information. Me having to educate people that the twins are hale and hearty, they hardly fall sick to the glory of God. They hardly, like, outside of maybe a simple cold or something, my children, you know, we've not had any dramatic anything with them. You know, they take their vaccines. Everything has been wonderful with them so far. And I'm grateful to God, you know. So I tell people that, like the doctor was trying to say, IVF is actually a fantastic thing for a lot of people to consider, because you can see certain things, you know, if there are any abnormalities and things, they can check for that, you know, even before, you know, putting the embryo back in you. So yeah, so that's my story in a nutshell. You know, I know it works out for me and it can work for a lot of people, but there's something I always tell people, that I personally feel that my faith played a lot in it, because even in Dubai, as much as they're a Muslim-based country, I remember there was something they always said. The three times I did it there, anytime they transferred the what's it called, the fertilizer eggs back into me, at some point they will say to me, at this point is left to Allah, is left to God. There's nothing else they can do after that point. Once they've done their own bits, once they've done everything they can do in their own laboratory and all of that, and they've put it into you, it becomes between you and God. There's no other way to explain it. And I remember thinking that coming from doctors, like every single time it was a recurring thing, you know, them saying, this is between you and God now, you know. So even that fourth one with Nordica, I remember the day of my transfer, you know, the doctor, everything, you know, we all prayed, you know, they told me to pray, I prayed, you know, and I just had a clarity on it, because I felt like, you know, I was in a Muslim state, and even they used to tell me it's up to Allah. So now I was back in my own country, and it was clear to me that, okay, I'm a Christian, I'm going to push my faith here. And it was just very clear that this was going to be God. So if it's going to happen, it will be God. And if it didn't happen, it's still God, you know. I had reached that clarity in my life that I wasn't going to not be like stop being a Christian or stop loving God, or I was very clear on that. And I feel like God himself saw my heart and he knew where I was on the matter. You know, it wasn't really about the IVF anymore. It was just, if he was going to do it, I also made it clear to God that I was always going to be vocal, you know. So, and that's what I've always been doing. I speak up about it any and everywhere, yeah, I don't have any shame in saying I did IVF, and I have my son and daughter now. So we thank God. So yeah, that's my own story.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you and congratulations.
Yes.
And the Lord will really look after this wonderful
Amen.
gifts that He has provided for you and your husband. And I wish them both a
Amen.
very happy birthday in
Amen.
advance. Yeah. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Or not? The people, they are clapping for you. I don't know whether you're seeing it. Okay, are you seeing?
I can see the clapping.
They're clapping for you.
In fact, I mean, a lot of people here are just saying, well, fantastic testimony of what God can do. It all boils down to exactly how we put it. Doctor, a lot of people need to recognize that what doctors do, if a person has cancer, he will go to a hospital and he will meet doctors. If a person has any condition, you go to a hospital and trust that the doctors can only treat. And in my opinion, fertility treatment is just a treatment. The end of who can heal and who can save is only God. So, Okiki, thank you very much. We have a myriad of questions on both the chat line and on Facebook. So I will start with the questions from the chat box and the question and answer box. Doctor, there's a question here that says, are embryos the same thing as follicles?
No, they're not. Follicles are what we see on scan. They are supposed to contain the eggs, all right? Embryos are the coming together of the sperm and the eggs. So you can't see that on scan. That is in the laboratory. So they are not the same.
Fantastic. Now, we have another question that says, what advice can you give to a man with Azuspermia and the best way for his wife to be pregnant?
Okay, Azuspermia means there is no sperm cells in the ejaculate, all right? And that, when I was talking about how to use IVF, you could do something that we call TISA, or testicular extraction or sperm aspirate, where we go to the testes and try to draw out the sperm, okay? But the sperm we get from here, they're not mature sperms. They're straight from the, if you like, the warehouse, right? So we need to use them for a procedure that we call ICSI, where we inject the sperm into the eggs. Okay, that is done under high magnification. So, but what the person can do is, there are two types of, there are two reasons why you might not have sperm cells in your ejaculate. Is either you're not producing them, or they are being produced but they can't get to where they're supposed to get to. For those who produce but they're not getting to where they're supposed to get to, then TISA will work. For those who they're not producing at all, the TISA will not work, and therefore they might need to use donor sperm.
All right, doctor, there's a question that has, I think, a double entendre. It's talking about, says, what is the stand of the church on unmarried 40-year-old women who may need to use donor sperm to have their own children while they are still waiting, trying to get married, say 40 and above, and maybe they need to use donor sperm to have children. Doctor, what's your take? Then I'll get to Pastor to try and look at it,
Yeah, thank you. From my own point of view, reproduction is a human right. That's what the World Health Organization also says, and therefore, whether you're married or you're not married, what we try to look at is, are you in a stable, can you provide for another life if you happen to have another life? Are you in a stable relationship that can cater for the needs of that child? If we can tick those two things, then you can use donor sperm. That's the medical point. And of course, you know that so many people do that. So that's my own view about it.
So, Pastor,
Are you waiting for my view? Are you waiting for my view?
yeah, just point of view.
Good one. Maybe I should give my view after I preach on Sunday so that my congregation won't run away. But honestly, let me say I don't know what the church's position is, okay? Because I've not asked the church if they have a position, but I know what Pastor Ituah's position is. And then I think the problem with God and man is what you call extramarital sex out of marriage, okay? And that involves emotions, it involves various types of things, okay? But I don't think God himself has any problem with reproduction, as it were, you know? And ideally, in the ideal situation, it would be nice for a man and a woman to come together and out of that union produce fruit. But even marriage itself, the primary objective is not children. The primary objective is companionship to help one another fulfill God's purpose. Children come as a bonus, as a benefit, a heritage, an inheritance, a gift. The fruit of the womb is a gift from God, okay? And therefore, like Doctor has said, everybody has a right to carry their own children. So if a woman is finding it difficult, and indeed a man, to have children through marriage, and they desire to look after children, then they have options. They can adopt, okay? Or they can go through a procedure which is medically proven for them. The age for me doesn't even matter. Just decides on what they have arrived at in their mentation. So I know that I have encouraged a lot of single women to adopt. None have come to me to request that they want to use donor sperms, but I know that a lady in our church actually used donor sperm to have her children, and God gave her a beautiful set of twins. And we have not, because of that, banished her from the church, okay? She didn't come for my advice, and if she had come for it, I probably would have given it to her. You know, the irony of it all, to be honest, was that if you look at our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, you can even say that he was a donor sperm, because his father and his mother did not meet physically. Some guy called the Holy Ghost came and donated his sperm and then produced Jesus Christ for a lady who was not quite in wedlock, but we can explain it. I think the challenge with the church is to be able to explain to the church that this woman who is pregnant didn't commit adultery, she didn't commit fornication, she made a choice to get pregnant so that she could have her own children. And we'll explain it, and we leave it to God to judge going forward. But for me, I would encourage people to try and look after children and carry their own children if they can, including adoption. We have single men who want to adopt, we have single women who want to adopt. I encourage them. And if you're able to do a procedure and somebody is willing to donate their sperm without giving you terms and conditions and making your life a frustration, I don't see what the problem is, to be honest.
Thank you.
Yeah, mute.
Doctor,
mute yourself.
I'm back on. Doctor, we have a question here. Someone says, my wife is 35 years old. They've been married for over 20 years. And still no baby. She has PCOS, and she has recently done lab and dye this month, and he's asking, can she conceive?
Yes, she can. Yes, she can. Because if she's 35, that's still a good age. PCOS might make it a little bit difficult, but talking to a doctor who can help might just be the secret to unlock their happiness. So yes, you can.
Happiness. All right. There's another question here talking about what hope do we have for people who have not seen their menstruation for 30 years? Is there any hope for them to be able to have children?
Yes, through IVF.
Straight.
They need to probably use donor eggs. I think that's one aspect also that probably I didn't speak so much about, that women who have reached menopause through IVF can have children by using eggs from another person.
We have another question for you, doctor. It says, I read online where the process of getting pregnant with adenomyosis is difficult, even with IVF. Is that true? Or?
Yes, adenomyosis is a form of endometriosis. Endometriosis is when you have the tissue that looks like what a woman sheds every month in the endometrium when it's present in other places, especially in the abdomen. So it's like you are bleeding inside the abdomen. Now, adenomyosis is a special variety where the bleeding occurs inside the muscle of the uterus. And that really makes pregnancy much more difficult. So yes, but it's not impossible, but it can be difficult, yeah. I'm just told, maybe, I don't know whether Omos, I don't know whether it's still on, who had the person you introduced, the president of FI.
President of FI.
He had about, I think they had a total of 11 IVF cycles, and the thing was that they were struggling with PCOS. I don't know whether he has anything that we want to add if he wants to chip in anything. No, not testimonial, just a word for the person who asked the question on PCOS. He's not there anymore.
No problem.
Okay, maybe we'll continue. If he's there, we'll see him. So that
whenever it comes in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, do people who have adhesions, is it possible for them to do IVF?
It depends on adhesions is scar tissue, all right? It depends on where this is, where it is. If it's inside the uterus where the baby should be, then we need to break it down by doing what we call a keyhole surgery. We don't cut you open. We go through the vagina into the cervix. We call it hysteroscopy, which is looking inside the uterus. We can do that. It's just a 30 minutes procedure. That is possible. But if the adhesion, the scar is inside the abdomen, that might even be the indication for IVF. So it depends on where the scar is. So having an adhesion depends on where it is, and that's what will dictate what you need.
Now we have another question. It says, does hydrosalpingo disrupt IVF from being successful?
Well, yes. Maybe some of these technical questions I can answer them alone. I want them to benefit from these people who are here today. So maybe some of these technical questions I can answer them, but I'll answer this and then we'll see some of the less technical questions so that they can share their experiences of these two great people who are here today with me. So I'm not just the only one talking. Hydrosalpingo or hydrosalpingo is water in the tube, all right? The tube is joined to the uterus, all right? So what we know is that when you have replaced your embryo, that you have done embryo transfer, and you put it into the uterus, if there is water in the tube, because it's joining to the uterus, it can come into the uterus. Now this water, because it is not supposed to be there, is infected. So you can introduce infection into the uterine cavity, and that reduces the chances of success of IVF. That's why we try to clip off or cut off the water in the tube before we do IVF. But that we don't need to open you up anymore. We can do that through what we call laparoscopy or pinhole surgery, and then we can clip off the tubes. We try to do that as much as possible because we know that hydrosalpinx will affect the success rate. But by what figure it affects it, we don't know, but we know it lowers the success rate.
Pastor, there's a very exciting question from a medical practitioner. He says, for the pastor in the house, please, sir, what is the best way to enhance the knowledge of men of God who don't have optimal understanding about other legitimate means of conception?
That's a very, very good question. And it's a little bit touchy. And usually for those people, it is probably a reflection of the amount of knowledge and information and even experience that they have been through. You know, a lot of people, we preach the gospel, but we don't preach it from a place of deep knowledge of other things. You know, we focus just on the Bible and this and that, and sometimes not a proper interpretation of the Bible. And then sometimes you've not experienced it. You know, there's some things that you can only experience. You know, when I lost my wife recently, people said all sorts of things. You know, but you know, nobody quite touched it because they didn't experience it. Okay, so when I see people who have been through what I have been through, and I'm looking at them, and I'm holding their hands, looking into their eyes, I can tell them that I know how you are feeling. I have experienced it. I know what you have been through. So sometimes we have this issue, but we'll keep talking to one another. The Bible says iron sharpeneth iron. We keep educating one another. We keep informing one another. We keep knowing, letting one another know that absolutely at the end of the day, it's the love of Christ, the love of God that oversees and overlooks all things. And that love will show you special attention and direct you in all things. So we'll talk to one another. It's an ongoing process. And we pray that God will open people's eyes and their hearts and their minds also.
Thank you very much. I need to now in terms of audio, but some people were saying that they couldn't hear me very well.
You're better now.
Okiki, there's a question. There is a question here for Okiki Marinho. They're saying, can you just shed some light on a little bit more detail in terms of your story? You know, you just gave it like, they put it like it's just, you touch the basics, but some detail that may help some of them who are going through the same ectopic pregnancies issue. There's someone who says they've had 9 years of ectopic pregnancy, and would like you to say something a little bit more about that.
Years. Okay, I'm not sure I understand what the person means by 9 years of ectopic pregnancy, but okay, since of course we have 2 fallopian tubes, could it be the person is trying to say the ectopic pregnancy didn't affect their tubes at all, like they still have their tubes intact, or maybe their own ectopic, the pregnancy is lodging elsewhere. In my own case, it was in my own fallopian tubes that it kept occurring. So that's why my tubes had to be removed. But I think doctor will have to let me know. I'm told that there might be other places where pregnancies can lodge that is also the wrong place. But all I knew was my own experience about it happening in my tubes. What else can I say about the experience? I mean, one of the first signs of ectopic is the whole spotting thing. You know, you're spotting, but if they check, if they're doing a scan, they can't find the baby in the right place. You know, those are usually early signs when they start saying they can't see this thing in the womb where it's meant to be. You know, the third time, or was it the fourth? My third ectopic was a bit of a more frustrating one because they couldn't see it even in the tube. Like it wasn't even showing though it was there, but they couldn't see it. Like the surgery they actually did, I had to sign that I'm the one letting them go in to go and look for where this baby has lodged because if it's not in the womb, it's definitely in the wrong place. And when they eventually went in, they found it hiding somewhere. I can't remember all the medical terms, but the bottom line is it wasn't lodged in the correct place. And for those that don't know, ectopic pregnancies can kill you. In fact, it's some people call it a silent killer, because the first ever time I had it, that my tube erupted. If I didn't get to the clinic as because I believe it erupted on a Sunday. I remember going through a lot of excruciating pain and rolling on the floor and telling my husband I thought it was just a bad period pain. It took me 3 days after before I went to the hospital to say this didn't seem right, because I thought that I was just going back, that my body was going back to normal. But maybe the person asking me all these questions, because I do my best to block out all that period of my life, because it was a really, really painful, sad period of my life, and because I'm doing my best not to call the name of the hospital that nearly killed me. So let's go back. The first ever ectopic should have been detected on time, but they didn't. Instead, the hospital told me to go home, that I was having an early miscarriage. So for those wondering, maybe I was one being careless. No, I wasn't being careless. I was actually told by a doctor to go home, that I was having a miscarriage, and that the miscarriage that I would just bleed it out, that I would just naturally leave my body. And this is from a very top hospital in Nigeria. So some weeks later, when it was cleared that it wasn't a miscarriage and it was actually an ectopic, you can imagine how traumatized I was by that experience, and that's what led me to start flying out of the country anytime I found out I was pregnant, so that, because I felt safer that way, But to be fair on Nigeria, what I've learned is it's really not that a lot of the hospitals are bad. I tell people to research on the doctors. So we have good doctors. You might not have fantastic hospitals, but you have specific good doctors, So that's what I've learned. So it's good to follow the doctor. So the doctor that actually operated on me was brought in from Luth Hospital to that private clinic on that fateful night in 2011. It was a doctor from that clinic. So even the second time when I found out I was pregnant, it was December 23rd, I found out I was pregnant, the second or something like that. And he said, no. December 23rd is when it was apparent that it was going to be another ectopic pregnancy. And it was that doctor that begged me to get on the next plane and fly out of Nigeria, because he personally had called other doctors in Nigeria and he couldn't find anyone that he was comfortable with that could do the surgery for me. So that's what I mean by, you have to find a good doctor that has your best interest at heart, because I wanted him to do that operation on me, like the second ectopic, but he was not around. And when he called around, the only people he could trust, none of them were available. So he just said I should get, and I literally had to get on next flight. But that's because I can afford to do that. But it's very painful in Nigeria that, we have to sometimes, find this extra money to save our lives or, leave the country. But all I'll say is, especially for women, like, of course, know your body, like there's a lot of educational stuff online, and try and find a good doctor, like I said, that would, take your medical history seriously and try and always give you the best advice, So yeah, that's my own addition.
Thank you very much. Doctor, we have an exciting question here. Someone is asking that, is it true that the chances of having a Down syndrome child is very high with pregnancy for women over 40 years, especially if they've not had a child naturally?
Well, yeah, very nice question. And it is true. But whether they've had children naturally or not naturally does not matter. Now, reproduction is age dependent. And, we say all the time that it's like football, a woman uses the first 11 eggs, the first thing when she's young. By the time she's about 35, she's using reserves. By the time she's like 30, over 37, she's using, she's no longer, she's gone from Premier League to Division 2. And so the chances that mistakes can occur during cell division, you know, we need to understand how babies are formed. The sperm and the egg come together. And then they now, after fertilization, they start multiplying until they become a big cell, and then all these organs start forming from them. Now, if the way God has created us is that if during this multiplication, it must be done evenly. If for any reason some cells are not dividing evenly, then there will be an error. And the chances become greater when the older will become, for the man and for the woman, but more for the woman first, and then later for the man as well. So the chances of Down syndrome also increases with age, both for the woman and even for the man also. So Down syndrome, but the good thing is that we can pick out, because these are chromosomal abnormalities. Chromosomes are the things where the DNA is hidden in. So we can fish out these chromosomes. Is probably the easiest genetic test to do. We can fish out these abnormal chromosomes, and then we can not transfer those embryos that are affected. Yeah, so, but age is the main determinant of Down syndrome.
All right, thank you, Doc. There are about 35 questions on the cost of IVF.
Some of them were directed at Pastor Ituah.
They were thinking Pastor could solve the problem, but I would like you, Doctor, to talk about IVF in terms of when people talk about the cost. Maybe because we have some level of interaction. I know that it's not an off-the-shelf item. So maybe you need to explain how IVF is costed. It's not like I want to buy a Mercedes, you drive to the shop and they tell you it is 42 million, you just drop 42 million, you drive the car out. So doctor, just take some time to explain the kind of cost model for IVF generally. And let's see where between Nigeria and other countries in the world, where we are.
Thank you. Costing, it's something that it's unfortunate the way our currency is going, you know, because the more we devalue the currency, the more difficult it is for people who want to practice properly. If we want to give you the kind of quality that you get in the UK, you get anywhere, then we cannot cut corners. If we don't want to cut corners, it means we have to use the materials that they're using in the UK, they're using in Germany, anywhere else. And so what we do is that since we started, we've been, even the water that we use to rinse these test tubes in the laboratory itself, we bring them from the UK. The gloves we bring from Germany, because they are powder, they're special gloves, they are powder-free gloves. If you are not going to, you know, if you are not going to meet one that is powdered in your pack, then you better go and get it from where you know that that can never happen. There's good quality control system. So, because powder actually poisons your embryos. So in order to do that, it means every day the naira is devalued. One is either your profit goes down, because sometimes you can't pass, you know, one day we woke up one day from 165, we went to 300 and something. For us to be able to make that grant, we need to double the prices that we're offering we're giving to our patients. But you and I know that that is not possible. And then again, sometimes some of the things that these people take for granted, we cannot. Power Nobody thinks about when you're going to have a clinic in the UK, you don't think about power. You're just going to connect and then you're on. In Nigeria, in my clinic, every clinic that we have has 3 generators. And then we have, each clinic has a transformer, apart from the inverters that we now put. Because the kind of business that we're doing is such that power cannot fail. I was telling somebody that if, for example, the power goes out at 2 a.m. and it's taking the security men a long time to change over, well, the inverter will have taken over. But for example, if the inverter is not taking over quickly or something is happening, about 7 of us our phones will start ringing because we have an alarm that's connected to your phones. So in order for us to be able to do all these things, if we want to do all these things, then it's a little bit expensive. So when people talk about, what I tell people is, somebody actually chatting with us here from the UK, what I tell them is when they talk about price, I just say, convert to pounds. Tell me what it is in pounds. The money we are because for them is really, and that's why I think that's why we're getting more people from diaspora. Yeah, they're coming in because it's cheaper for them. But unfortunately, for those of us who are earning naira, it's a big deal, double whammy. Yeah, but all of us are victims in this thing because they look at you sometimes and say, doctor is making a lot of money. I wish.
Doctor is making a lot of money.
I hear you, Pastor.
Doctor, I hope you are hearing me.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yes.
A lot of people keep asking, why does IVF fail? Like, why is the fail rate pretty high? I know. Yeah, yes. Like, what are the common denominators that make IVF,
fail?
Yeah, that's okay. I'm going to answer the question, but I actually wanted to direct it at you because when you said you had these failed cycles, how you felt. Because listening to Pastor, I heard something again. I never assumed that I know it. I can tell you what the book say, all right? But I always like hearing from the people who have gone through it. Because sometimes you might pick up a word that might help you with how they feel. That's the way that I used to improve the services that we render. I listen to people and I hear sometimes what they say. That's why if you come to my clinic, we have counselor, we have sex therapy, we have acupuncture. It's by listening to people that made me to say, okay, maybe this can help them to go through this. But back to the question about how cycles fail. The interesting thing is that the success rate actually is carried by the couples themselves, determined by the couples. It's the quality of the egg and the sperm, if everything is working well, if your laboratory is working well. It's the quality of the egg and the sperm that determines the quality of the embryo that you're going to get. All right, and that's what we talk about. We spoke about, what is it called? Down syndrome also. The commonest reason why IVF does not succeed is because there is a mistake when there is a division. So the embryo is not even viable. Some people say sometimes and say the embryologist said it's a grade A embryo. I just laugh. Because what the embryology has told you is what the embryo looks like. I give this example, is that you stand by the window, you are a woman, you want to get married, you stand at the window and it's the marketplace and 100 men are going to pass by and they tell you to choose a husband. You're going to choose who is tall, who is whatever, what your dream is. But do you know whether he has any sperm cell? You can't know. The same thing with the embryologists and the embryos. You can only tell what they look like. But the most important thing in the embryo is the genetic composition of the embryo. Can this embryo become a baby? And the embryologist cannot tell that by just simply looking. There are tests that we can do to see whether they can become embryos, but they are pretty expensive. You know, it's just not like now, it's like the Techno and the iPhone. You know, they both do the same, but of course, you know that you have to pay premium. So, so that's the thing. So right now, it is the couple who, and that's why sometimes we sit people down. You see a 47-year-old woman, and she says, I want to use my eggs. And you know, from the get-go, it's like you are heading to something that, I mean, it's like it can never work. In the UK, the body that monitors IVF in the UK is called FEA. They just brought out in early July the result for the UK in 2018, all of the UK. And what they saw is that the baby take-home rate is 23% per embryo transfer. For the whole of the UK. Now, but this is age dependent. For people less than 35, is about 31%.
Okay.
For people more than 42, is less than 5%. So when you are 47 and you are sitting in front of me and you are telling me you want to use your eggs, do you understand? So the decision making is so important. That's why I always get out of my way to try to educate people, because you should know about IVF before you need it. It's not when you are sitting in front of the doctor, when you are now emotionally involved, and probably what he's even saying is just entering through one place and going out through the other place. That's not the best time to make a decision. And in Nigeria, we just don't know anything about medical science. We are not interested. It's boring to us. We prefer Big Brother, you know? So for me, I think it's an opportunity for all of us to understand how IVF works even before we need it. So it's going to help our decision making, okay? Now, like I now said, where the doctor comes in is that the doctor must be experienced enough. The laboratory they have must be good enough to be able to get, when you have good gametes, to be able to turn them into viable embryos. Now, once they've done that, then the experience of the doctor in transferring the embryo also is critical. After that, the doctor has nothing to do with you again. Once the doctor has transferred embryos into you, is a G factor. It's God. So now, but for us to understand what is going to happen next is that you now have a transplant in you, you know, like kidney transplant. I'm just making it as easy as possible. Like you have a kidney transplant in you, you know there is a chance that you will reject it. And that's why when you have a transplant, they give you a lot of drugs so that you can accept that organ. But in IVF, we cannot afford to give people any drugs to make them accept, because we want nature to just play its part. So after transfer, whether the pregnancy is from the bed or from IVF, it really doesn't matter anymore. Nature takes its natural course. And so when we see from there, we see that, and that's why I find it funny when I hear people phoning around, how much is IVF in your clinic? How much is IVF in your clinic? That's the wrong way to go about it. Because the cheapest is not necessarily the best. The most expensive is not necessarily the best. I don't know whether I've answered the question.
So how much is IVF in your clinic?
It's not a chef item.
That's the G factor. But I want you to explain something, doctor. You know, this fallopian tube issue. What makes a pregnancy occur in the fallopian tube? And is there an alternative to actually cutting off this tube? Can the tube be repaired? Can we strengthen the tube? and so on and so forth, because I need to know what can one do? How do we prevent pregnancies in the fallopian tube if it is possible at any stage?
Great question, Pastor. Thank you. Now, fertilization takes place in the tube, all right? But the way God has made it is that after that fertilization, the fertilized egg should go back into the uterus and implantation should take place. Now, if for any reason, either the commonest being infection or endometriosis, the tube cannot move, because that movement is like the contraction of the tube is what transports the fertilized egg. Now, the way God has made is that the tube also has something, you know, like the ears we have in our nostrils. There's something like that even in the tubes as well, which propel the egg into the uterus. If these are destroyed, then this pace might be slow, and the fertilized embryo now gets caught up in the tube, and it starts to grow. But like Okiki said, the tube cannot expand. So as the embryo becomes bigger, multiplies and becomes bigger, something has to give. And because the embryo is living and it wants to grow, it's going to burst the tube. So it depends on what part of the tube it is trapped in. We can see the latter part, or the what we call the distal part of the tube, where you have this finger-like thing, where it picks up from the ovary. That is a more elastic part of the tube. So if it is located in that part, it's likely that it's going to take a longer time for it to rupture than if it's in the proximal part, which is near the uterus. That easily ruptures. So that you're going to get that's going to rupture very early. But you could have it for a long time if it's in a place like that where it's more elastic.
My third ectopic was in the one you just described. That's what I couldn't explain. Yeah, that was my case.
Okay.
That was my case. Yeah.
So so when it happens like that, in fact, it is possible for the ectopic to be expelled, because you know the tube continues to contract. So it's possible for it to be expelled from the tube, and then it continues to grow. So that's why sometimes we have extrauterine pregnancy, where you can have it in the abdomen and it continues to grow in the abdomen. Actually, babies are grown up to term in the abdomen. But of course, that is also dangerous, because the placenta could be on the major blood vessel. So it's now we're trying to see how to save the tube, and so many things are being done now. So sometimes you don't have to cut the tube. You can now, there are medical treatment for ectopic pregnancy. You can inject put some injections into the ectopic, and then the pregnancy stops growing, it dies. But most of the time, the tube is not very good. So there is I think that was what happened in the second time that Mrs. Marinho had that ectopic. They tried to conserve that tube. And that's why you had another ectopic on the same tube again. So we sometimes look at and say that even when you can conserve, do you really want to conserve? You know, because there's a risk that there can be another ectopic in that tube. So for now, that's the way that, but now also, you don't have to open somebody up completely for ectopic. You can do laparoscopic surgery. Or you can't stop an ectopic. You can only detect it early.
You can't prevent it.
No, you can't.
No.
What is this thing you call endometriosis?
Okay. This is a form of disorder in which women have every month a woman menstruates. What she sheds is the inner lining of the uterus, what we call endometrium. Okay, now for some reason, some people are blessed they are blessed in the sense that they are 1 in 10 of women. They now have this lining of the uterus in another place apart from where it's supposed to be. So what happens is that every month, that place also bleeds. So you can imagine it's on the ovary. So the woman is bleeding from the ovary every month when she sees her period. But that won't come out, is in her abdomen. So it's like one is bleeding inside. So after a while, what happens is that because blood is not supposed to be in the abdomen, the organs start breaking out the blood, and then the body tries to arrest that situation by coming together. And so we have what we call scar tissue or adhesions forming inside of the woman. And so that is one of the reasons why you see some women, is not always the reason, but some of the time, some women, when they are menstruating, the wall comes to a stop. That is the commonest sign of endometriosis. They can't do anything when they are menstruating. Either when they're in school or they're working, or everything just comes to a halt when they're menstruating. Such people we should search for endometriosis in such people. All right. Then also some women cannot even consummate their marriages. Sex is a big issue because of these deposits that are located in other places, and the organs have been gummed together, so that having sex becomes a major issue for them. That's also another, when you have such people also, you should look for endometriosis in them. Unfortunately, until about 30 years, 20 years ago, we thought endometriosis was not common in blacks. But it's not true. It's the same prevalence in blacks and whites. God does not discriminate. So, and now we're seeing a lot more of this endometriosis, even here in Nigeria. Oh, and sometimes also, Pastor, this might even be useful to you, because sometimes you see some women bleeding from unusual places, like their navel, their sometimes even tip of nose, some funny places, and it's endometriosis. Yeah, and some people decide to call them witches, because how can you be bleeding from your navel?
They're from Onosis village, witches.
We fly in the afternoon. We fly in the afternoon now, Pastor. We don't wait again for night. We fly afternoon time, daylight flight.
I know.
Doctor, there is a very question here, or somebody requires some kind of information. It says, "Good evening, doctor. Please, how can cervical fibroid be removed without opening up? Because my sugar level is high. So my consultant in some hospital in Abuja said I can't go for the surgery now, but the fibroid is coming out from my private, but something is still holding it, and I've been in severe pain and bleeding too. I have had several miscarriages, and after removing it, can I still conceive again? I am thinking of going for adoption. I will be 43 next month, and I've married for 3 years plus."
Yeah, fantastic question. But the first thing I will say is that you have to control sugar, because that can kill. It's not only having children now. A lot of things can go wrong once your blood sugar is uncontrolled. So I think we should try to control that first. But back to our own question now. It depends on how the cervical fibroid is, because from what she's saying now, probably it's possible even to go from the vagina to remove it. If that's a much easier surgery to do. But nobody is going to put anybody whose blood sugar is spiking to sleep. So I don't think it's advisable for anybody, even with low carb. So it's important for this blood sugar to be brought down. I think that's the elephant in the room. Every other thing can be sorted out. So and yeah, it's possible to bring down the sugar.
We have another question, or rather, someone needs some help. It says, "Sir, I have done IVF 3 times, but not successful. Body accepted it and later rejected it. What can be the cause of this rejection after I've been having symptoms of pregnancy? I am 56 years old."
Okay. Now, my question, that's not the description is not full. Was she using her eggs or was she using donor eggs? Because a 56-year-old using her eggs is like going on the third mainland bridge and pouring money down the lagoon. So if she was using donor eggs, yes, a good chance of success, but a lot of things need to be done. We need to look at what is your uterus like, because, 2 things are necessary, the sperm, the egg, but also where you are going to put them. We need to do an assessment to see that, especially when what we have seen in this environment is that for women, we did a study about 3,000 women. We looked at the findings from looking into their uterus, and we saw that 61% of them had problems inside their uterus. So in this environment, women who are over 35, you need to do its composite and an assessment of the endometrium must be done. So it's important that that is also done. And she can let us talk later on or send an email, and I'll be able to offer an advice. Yeah, you see, for me, I want the technical questions I can even answer. I can even take them on Ask Me Anything, but I don't want these 2 people to, and that's why for me, I'm saying that, Okiki is not here now. Failed cycle, how do you go through it? How do you feel, because you had 2. Tell us what.
3.
3, aha. You had 3. Okay. So tell us what exactly, what do you think?
Quite a number.
And then what do you think the doctor can help?
I think what we can do is that we do an Ask Me Anything special edition, and then be able to take as many of these questions. We'll try and capture all the questions and have a special Ask Me Anything edition, and we're just answering the questions because many of them are very technical. Many of them would also require that there's some information that has not been given that cannot allow you give very detailed answers.
Okay, Okiki, we're waiting for you. Doctor,
Sorry.
I won't allow Nora to deny me this knowledge.
The feeling, here. Let me see. The first failed IVF. I cried, but I didn't feel that down because I had started researching it, and I felt like I'd given myself the opportunity to tell myself, okay, if it doesn't work, this is what we'll do. The truth is, I think it was not till the 3rd one that I lost complete hope. My first 2, I still had this attitude of my body is getting used to this different way of trying to conceive. That was the way I explained it to myself. So I wasn't that emotional. I still had hope. I still was very positive. In fact, when the first one failed, if I had money, I almost wanted to do it immediately. I remember asking doctor, how soon can I try again? So I had this attitude of, if I had money, I wanted to keep trying. That was how I felt at the time. But it was not till my 3rd one that I was completely distraught. I think by then I just thought this is number 3, and I think I had given myself 3 times. Like I thought by the third one, it has to work. Like I didn't even give myself room to think it will not work. So that was the one that really hit me hard. And, you know, that hopeless feeling, I did, and I started being one of those women that they didn't really want to attend people's children's anything. I really didn't want children around me. And in my own case, I think it was when did my sister, because I'm the firstborn in my family. The secondborn, she has twins naturally. She has 3 kids now. So her first pregnancy was twin girls. So when I was going through the second ectopic, she was pregnant with twins and went on to have them. So this is me having a sister that is, you know, seemingly having a walk in the park, having kids. And now I'm going through ectopic days and hysteroscopy and this and that and all these medical terms. So it took its toll. But she was such a good sister that I remember she used to intentionally come and dump the children on my head because I think she knew that I could sink into that state of depression and she didn't want that for me. So she used to make them call me like big mommy or, you know, like she just always wanted to include me. She didn't want me feeling any type of way about it. And I'm forever grateful to her. So to be fair, because that's why I said it matters the family or friends you have around me. It matters that she was being intentional because I didn't have that fight in me anymore. You know, left to me sincerely, I didn't want kids around me. I didn't want to hear anything about babies. I didn't want to attend anything to do with children. That was my state of mind. But because of people like her that kept forcing me, and she would invite me for things and make me take her twins, you know, to those events. So I eventually I had to fight and snap out of that dark feeling of feeling like, you know, what's going on and what's God playing at here. You know? So yeah, so that was me, you know, like there are some good days and there were some really bad days, you know. It's yeah. So that was my experience.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's fantastic, and that's we thank your sister so much.
Yeah.
But what's God playing out here? That's what caught my attention. God is always God. God, you know, God looks at the entire continuum. And what is playing out here is the privilege of hearing your experience, benefiting a lot of people out there who are probably going through what you went through and who are losing hope, getting depressed. And God has just used you as a sign, as a symbol to ensure that other people have hope, other people are encouraged, other people don't go through depression, other people are strengthened, and so on and so forth. So God is a fantastic guy. He sees everything from the beginning to the end and from the end to the beginning. You know, some of the greatest people in scripture in the world were people who their parents had traumatic pregnancies. A gentleman called Samson, his parents had delayed marriage, no pregnancy. Isaac himself was, if it was left to Dr. Ajayi, he wouldn't have allowed that pregnancy to go through because that woman was he would have said, you know what, you can't use plenty donor sperm, all the donor sperm in Saudi Arabia. But the woman still made the thing at 90 something. Isaac himself had a 20-year delay before he had a set of twins and so on and so forth. And of course, he had a 20-year delay. He was 40 when he got married and he didn't have children until he was like 60. I don't know how old his wife was, and of course, John the Baptist, his parents had actually given up that they would ever have children, but he turned out to be one of the greatest people in the world. So God, even the prophet Samuel, his mother cried and cried and cried and cried and cried for children. And so God knows what he's doing. And that's what I just keep encouraging people by, that they must lift up their faith. They must focus on God. They must do their best that they can with the help of medicine and science and doctors and so on and so forth. But at the end of it all, God has the ultimate say and is looking at everything in a continuum. And my own life too has even been blessed by the trials and tribulations that I've been through. Painful at that time, very, very painful. I remember my wife, the pregnancy coming down, and she went to the bathroom, and I had this huge wail from the bathroom, like the ceiling had come down. You know, she just wailed. And for the next couple of hours, she was just there on the bathroom, just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And almost for like a week or two, it was a real situation in our home. But at the end of it all, she woke up one day, snapped out of it, and said, you know what? I'm going to make sure that other people have this sort of privilege. So we just have to keep working with God and keep trusting him and keep praying and keep hoping and so on and so forth. So that's God. We must encourage people that God is there all the time. He's there all the time. He knows what he's doing. If he has provided this level of science and knowledge for doctors and so on and so forth, I think he's a brilliant God, and he'll continue to help us in Jesus.
Yeah. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you. Thank you, Okiki. Now, somebody asked this question that I'm resisting now, but I have. He says, why is Dr. Ajayi not seeing patients anymore? Well, I still see patients, but you know I can't see everybody, and I've trained so many people. I have a structure in place. That's why I can run a clinic in Abuja. I can run one in Asaba, and my main work now is that I should maintain the standard that they have in Asaba, Abuja, and Lagos to be the same. So if I'm bogged down seeing every patient, then what are the doctors that have been with me? Some of them have been with me for 10 years. So they know as much as I know. So I'm not ashamed to say that, you know. So for me, yeah, what they just come to me for is my opinion on some things. And I'm ready, always willing to give them my opinion. So though I might not see people physically, every day I get reports of everything that is happening, both in Lagos, Abuja, and Asaba. And if I need to have any input into it, I do that. So I might not see you physically. Sometimes some people from Abuja mention their name. I tell them their story because I've read the story over and over and over and over again. So that's the way it is. But don't expect to see me attending to patients all the time. So, and I'm sure pastor does not do everything in his own church anymore too. He has people that he has trained. So I think it's something that we all just have to try to come to terms with.
I mean, the world is about imparting knowledge and training people and creating a system that will work. That's how you multiply yourself all over the place. So, Dr. Ajayi, thank you very much for the phenomenal work that you're doing. And thank you for sharing your knowledge so willingly with a lot of people. And thank you for trying to reproduce yourself and giving hope to a lot of people. I really thank you. And God will surely bless you.
Amen. Yeah. Honors. So I think also I want to say that we are going to have a program on cost because I see a lot of questions on cost. So I think we're going to have a program where we're going to bring some people who have gone through IVF, how they raise money for IVF. So this will be people like you and I who probably they are not designers like Okiki. So they're going to tell us how they raise money for IVF, and I think that will be instructive to so many of the listeners.
All right. Thank you very much, everyone on the panel. Thank you, Pastor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Some of the comments on the platform have said, look, Pastor, God bless you for helping people clear the air. At least now they know that God is also interested in their fertility. So I'm sure many people will leave this place today better informed and willing to take the right decisions at the right time, because some of the challenges that you would find when I was talking about the people with age, with every passing year for a woman or even for a man, the clock is ticking. So the earlier you take those decisions, the better. And, and help yourself. God will be with us in everything we do in Jesus' name. So Dr. Ajayi, thank you very much for your time. And as we've promised, we will have a special session on many of the questions. We have every Facebook Live. We have a Facebook Live with Dr. Ajayi, and it's Ask Me Anything. So it's just taking questions and treating issues as they come. And we'll publicize it as usual and get as many people to come on board. Okiki, thank you for your wonderful story, and thank you for all.
Thank you for
You've done. So many people here are also grateful that you've shared this and you've encouraged a lot of people to believe that it's still possible. It's not over until it's over. So thank you very much. So wish everyone a wonderful evening. Have a blessed rest of the day. Have a fantastic Sunday and the beginning of a new week. And may the week be fantastic for everyone on board. Thank you very much. And God bless you all.
Thank you. Doctor, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
All right, sir. Thank you.
Look after those twins, and God will be with all of you.
Amen.
God bless you, people.
Amen. Thank you.
you.
Thank you, sir. All right. God bless.
All right.